Hello, Dr. Laura. Welcome to the Hidden Why podcast. Great to have you here.
Thank you for having me, Lee.
Whereabouts are you based in the world?
I'm based in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, and I can see the beautiful Rocky Mountains in the distance.
Oh, lovely. We've got nice views.
We do. We have beautiful mountains here and wildlife and you name it. And it's beautiful sunny weather today.
No, it's opposite here in the
Oh,
Great Down Under.
where do you live?
Got a beautiful bit of rain on the Sunshine Coast.
Oh, gorgeous. I love that part of the world. We wanted to move there twice and it never worked out, but it was on our list.
Well, you still got time, huh?
That's true. Maybe.
Congratulations on the book.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's been a real labor of love, and I'm just delighted that it's out in the world.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to discussing it. There's some good personas or personality types that you describe in the book, which I want to delve into a bit. The book is titled "I Wish I'd Quit Sooner," and it's not about quitting smoking rather than
No.
quitting a job. Practical strategies for navigating and escaping a toxic boss. So let's delve into it. What inspired you to write I Wish I'd Quit Sooner?
I had experienced a couple of toxic bosses in
Right.
my career. I've been an entrepreneur for the last 16 years, but toxic bosses are something that you never forget. But the thing that I had been seeing in my psychology practice across Canada and beyond is that there were more and more people suffering under toxic leadership across industries. And I saw it as a trend that seemed to be growing post-pandemic. So, as an adjunct professor of organizational psychology, I'm able to dig into certain topics, and I needed a new topic to do research on to look into. And this was the topic. I said, I'm going to look into toxic leadership with my research team, and we're going to figure out how it works, what it is. And there wasn't much research in North America. So we did a study across North America of toxic boss survivors and found that there were certain behaviors and terrible impacts and shocking stories. And we needed to understand this more. And I needed to get a book out to help people translate it into how they could get through these terrible
Right.
situations in their careers.
Okay. So personal story for you. You've had a couple of toxic bosses in the past. Can you share a particular example that you went through and how that made you feel and what that led to?
Yeah, earlier in my career, I had finished my PhD and I was with a brand new job in a consulting firm. And being a high achiever, you want to impress your boss. I had this boss who gave me this session to deliver for our clients, and then she went on vacation. So I had to create
Hmm.
all the materials and then deliver it. And I delivered it right when she got back from vacation. So she was there. I got the help of two other consultants, senior consultants in the firm. I did my best job. Was it perfect? No, because I'm still on a learning curve, but it was pretty good. And I got good client
Yeah.
feedback from the session. I've done a lot of speaking. I mean, I came across confident, but she didn't have a chance to micromanage it. And she was a control freak. She was a narcissist, and she was, among other things, there's eight personas of a toxic boss.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
just naming two,
Yeah.
but she just tore me to shreds in front of the other two consultants and just made me feel really
Really
small.
insignificant.
So that was
Hmm.
the beginning of her trying to erode my self-confidence. And here I was. I mean, I was 30 years old. I had all this experience, consulting experience already underway. And then I also had my doctorate, but she really made me feel small. But I
Yeah.
got out of there after 2 months. And I later learned she was known as the Ice Queen in our part of the consulting industry. So I talk about that story
Ice
in my
Queen.
book, just as an example of I got out of it, but a lot of people feel trapped. They can't get out because they're stuck financially. And that's why I have a bird cage on the front of my book because they're literally trapped.
Yes. I think most people listening can put their hands up to having experienced a toxic boss in some form, right? You said before that you've noticed, because you're an organizational psychologist, is that right?
Yes. Hmm.
And you said you've noticed an uprise in more people having toxic bosses or trauma from workplace.
Hmm.
since the pandemic. Is that a reason why that shift has come, do you think? Or like I would have thought it's always been a sort of an issue, but are
I
people
mean,
just
it's
talking
always
about these things more?
definitely, it's always been an issue. Anecdotally, and through my own, what I'm seeing as a thought leader, I would definitely say it seems to be on the uprise, but it's really tough to nail that type of data because a toxic boss never admits they're a toxic boss. So you could never actually quantify how many are out there without asking the people, have you reported to a toxic boss? And I've spent a lot of time really looking at, well, what is a toxic boss? And what's the difference between a toxic boss and a difficult boss? Because there are a lot of difficult bosses, and sometimes we can use that term toxic and throw it around. So I want to be really careful about what we're talking about. But I do think it's on the rise because of the geopolitical tensions, uncertainties in the world, economic fears, instability. All of that breeds more and more toxic behaviors, fear, control, really toxic competition. And then we see those behaviors coming forward more and more.
Do you think we're becoming more soft as a human race, and so we just can't hack it in the workplace anymore?
Are we becoming more soft? I think the younger generation that has entered the workforce, Generation Z or Z, I would say that Generation Z is, yeah, more not
Soft
soft, I would
is soft is
say.
a fairly cruel word. I
Yeah,
don't mean to be
they don't
cruel.
put up with bullying and bad behavior as easily.
Yeah,
They grew up with the talk about mental health and bullying and stuff. That was more part of their narrative, so they don't put up with crap as long. And they also value work-life balance and health and
yeah.
well-being more than the generations before them. I'm a Gen X, but boomers, that wasn't as much of a value system as it is for the newest generation. So yeah, we actually have done research across the generations on toxic leadership and burnout, and that was one of our findings. The younger ones won't put up with it as long, so they don't
Right.
burn out as easily because they just leave.
They'll quit sooner.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this book is aimed at those people that are feeling trapped at the workplace with a toxic boss, or is it also
Yes.
suitable for toxic bosses? Because I feel like there's probably many bosses out there that may not even know that they're toxic in the workplace.
Well, a truly toxic boss is about 5% of bosses,
Okay.
maybe 10. And again, it's hard to really
Hard
quantify.
to,
I'm
yeah.
just like guessing. So I think that, well, I know that a truly toxic boss will never admit they're toxic. They won't say, "Hey, Lee, do you think I'm a toxic boss?" They won't even ever ask the question because that's
Mm,
out of it's never their fault. Nothing's their problem. It's always everyone else.
yeah.
So a difficult boss will ask that question. They will ask the question. So I think that we need to really differentiate a difficult from a toxic boss.
Do you think? I mean, we're probably going to get into the personas that you've described in the book, and I'm just relating it from my experience because I feel in the past that potentially I was somewhat a toxic boss myself, and it wasn't until my leader identified a few things in my behaviors that made me go, "Oh, really?" And then I had to work to change those behaviors, and maybe that was just learning and training rather than necessarily being toxic.
Yeah, like you probably were a difficult boss, and a difficult boss can
I
be
still am.
really frustrating. They can micromanage, they can be hard on people, they can be too direct, too blunt, they can be disorganized. There's all these different things I talk about when it comes to a difficult boss, and I've spent my 25-year career helping them be better leaders. And I get that because a lot of people are thrown into leadership and management without the right training,
Training, yeah.
supports. They're just thrown in because they're good at their job. Was that your case, Lee?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, so you
There
didn't
wasn't
mean to
much
cause
training there, and I
harm,
guess I learnt on the job, leadership.
but you didn't mean to cause harm.
No, I don't
No,
think so.
exactly. You didn't mean it. And it's
So a toxic box definition is someone that actually means to
not
do harm.
means to, but they are they cause ongoing harm. The harm gets worse over time, and the harm that they cause impacts people's productivity, well-being, and engagement.
Right.
And it's either their overt behaviors, and the overt ones are the harassment, bullying. So the really targeted negative behaviors that cause harm, and they don't feel the remorse for that. That would be one of the big differences of a toxic versus difficult boss. The covert behaviors of a toxic boss are more manipulative, behind the scenes, underhanded, and those are some of my personas as well that go about it in a more manipulative way, like the dishonest manipulator, the gaslighter, so gaslighting behaviors. Those ones are really damaging to people,
Yeah. Well, I guess they're all damaging, right?
all of them.
So you've
But
got,
some are
is there
even more
eight
so.
of them? Eight common personas. So we've got self-serving egomaniac,
Yeah,
control freak,
yeah,
dishonest manipulator,
yes.
the great divider,
hmm
unethical corrupter, and the abusive a-hole.
Yeah, I had fun naming
And
these, right? Because you got to have a bit of humor in them, but not a funny subject.
how
But
did you
I
name them?
wanted
Like,
to.
how did you create eight common personas?
Well, I had all the data from all of our interviews, and we had all these pieces of data, and you kind of need to put the behaviors into categories of what's going on. And we did it through real interviews and stories. And then,
Right.
as an organizational psychologist, I'm good at coding and at creating frameworks. So the
Hmm.
framework was these behaviors fit really nicely into these 8 buckets. And if I can have this way of people, and my book goes through checklists of what are you dealing with out of these 8 types? And people are often dealing with more than one type. So a toxic
Right.
boss is often several of these personas.
Uh-huh.
And it's not meant to diagnose your boss. It's meant to give you a language to understand what is happening and the garbage that you're dealing with so that you can get back in control of your career and you can find a path forward. And there's
Right.
actually 6 options discussed in my book of a path forward.
So what were some of the most surprising or misunderstood persona types for you?
Wow. Surprising is the
Or the,
gaslighting type behaviors and how
talk
they
talk
can,
talk to me about a
yeah.
gaslighter.
Gaslighters, they make you feel like you're losing your memory or forgetting things, or you're starting to lose your mental capacity. Maybe you're going crazy. And they do so by, here's an example. I mean, I talked to someone today that he was in a COO role reporting to a toxic CEO, and he described what it was like to be gaslit. So the CEO would say, Hey, I told you to do that report. How come I don't have it? But you didn't tell me to do that report. You told me to do this other thing. No, I didn't. You must have not heard me correctly. And then you start to doubt yourself, but you know for a fact that they didn't ask you to do that. So
Right.
they start to make you question your memory and they look
Okay.
for mistakes you're making that you know you didn't make.
Gotcha. The
Yeah. Okay.
gaslighter. Yeah.
Mhm.
Is there one of these personas that are more common than others or less common than
Well,
others?
the narcissist is really common across toxic bosses. I would argue that a lot of toxic bosses have narcissism going
Yeah.
on as one of the personas.
Yeah. Narcissism is
Yeah,
quite rare. One in 10 people?
quite rare or quite common, would you say?
Well, I don't know. Is 1 in 10 common or rare?
I don't know. I think it's pretty common in terms
Yeah.
of like 1 in 10 that does crop up a fair bit. I think narcissism is a term that we overuse in society.
Yeah.
Like everyone who's gone through a divorce, their ex is a narcissist, for example, right? Like
Yeah.
just examples like that. Narcissism is actually a diagnosable clinical personality disorder.
Yes.
But I do use it in the book because I want to get at the narcissistic behaviors because they are hard on people. Like they're brutal to deal with because they don't have that sense of empathy. They have this grandiosity. It's their way or the highway, and no empathy towards their impact on others. It's all about them.
Yes. Yeah. So no empathy, characteristic of a narcissist. Um, they're always right. They don't do anything wrong.
Yes. Hmm.
Yeah. What are some red flags that people could pick up on about toxic bosses that might help them earlier so they don't get this dragged out
I
experience?
have I have a whole chapter on that. How to never again work for a toxic boss is the chapter. And what I did is in the research really asking what were the warning signs now that you can look back with hindsight, what were some of the warning signs? And people were able to identify them. And some of the warning signs are how they treat you during the hiring process. So a
Right?
toxic boss will often, we call it love bombing, or make you stroke your ego, right? Lee, you know, you're awesome, you're amazing. It would be great to have you on my team, but just overboard, just buttering you up and making it sound like the team is the be all and end all. This is the best opportunity ever. But you know that every opportunity has its pros and cons. So
Yeah.
it's very much, yeah. Can
It's
you relate to
funny as
that?
I can definitely relate. I always know when they're super kind or something like that. I'm just like, it's just come up time and time again for me where I'm just like, you've been super kind and then you turn into this asshole.
Yeah, it's a bait and switch technique.
It's
So they
weird.
do that.
Hmm.
They don't respect your time. Okay? So they maybe
Okay.
run really late for your interview or they go overtime. They don't
That's a
listen. So
good
they don't
sign.
actively, they talk a lot. So during an interview, I'm interviewing you, but I'm talking most of the time. That would
Right.
be a toxic boss warning sign. Just because
Uh-huh.
someone does that doesn't mean they're a toxic boss, but toxic bosses tend to
Tend to
like the
do
sound of
that.
their own voice.
Gotcha. There's some really good red flags right there. So love bombing or overly kind or enthusiastic. Don't actively listen, talk too much. What else have you
And if
got?
you ask them, well, if you ask them, what are you like as a leader? What do how would other people describe working for you?
Hmm.
They answer it in a way that's either really arrogant and overly self-assured, or they have trouble answering it, right?
Okay.
Whereas if you have a good leader or a great leader, they'll usually have humility with that answer. Well,
Yeah.
you know, seems to be what people have said about me, and uh, but a
Be a
toxic
bit more
boss has
humble.
trouble. Yeah, they're not humble and they
Yeah.
may have trouble answering that. You
Uh-huh.
know, so just listen to how they answer it and ask other people who have reported to them or report to them, "Hey, what's Lee like to work for?" And if the person doesn't have that much to say, they might not throw you under the bus, but they say, "Oh yeah, you know, it was good. I learned a lot. It was good," but they're not saying a glowing review of Lee. It gives me
Right.
a, okay, warning flag.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's good. So there's sort of pre-job red flags that we can look out for in the workplace, working for a toxic boss. Obviously, I guess you feel, I mean, maybe this is the next part of our conversation, but having a toxic boss, the emotional and psychological toll on someone is quite significant, right? And that's probably what you experience in your job, dealing with people like that.
Oh, unbelievable. The mental health impacts. Some of the biggest ones are anxiety. It ends up causing you major anxiety because you're walking on eggshells. This person is usually unpredictable. You're
Yeah.
trying to save your job, you're trying to please and appease them, and you never know what to expect. And then your
Mm.
sleep starts to suffer. So we see lots of sleep disruption, particularly the night before you have a meeting with your boss. People will lose the night's sleep. We see that. We see self-esteem and self-confidence nosedive. And I've worked with even executive level people, highly educated, successful in their career, and then they find themselves under a toxic boss and they lose their confidence. They lose their edge. And it's
Mm.
very, very sad to see. And I'm really good at bringing them back up and out of that. If I can coach them, the book can help with that a lot too.
Right.
But it's getting them back to realize, hey, you still have all these skills and strengths. That toxic boss can't take that away from you.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's getting to a point where, you're starting to lose sleep, you're really getting anxiety. Um, that's quite heavy to have. Are there earlier signs that you share in the book before we get to that point?
Earlier signs about the toxic boss's
Yeah, when you
behavior.
if you're in a toxic environment and something you can pick up on early that's like a red flag to say, hey, I shouldn't be sticking this out.
Yeah, I mean, I think all of the behaviors of each of the personas are some of the early warning signs because sometimes you can just have one of those behaviors show up, and then, oh, now there's two behaviors and three. I would say that
When you
the
start seeing
biggest
a
thing,
pattern,
yes, it's about patterns, but the biggest thing the research participants said from industries across North America is, I wish I'd quit sooner. That's why I called my book that.
yeah,
I toughed it out. I stayed too long because I thought it would get better, or I thought the company would get rid of that boss because people were leaving. There was high turnover, or we had filed complaints through HR, and yet the boss stayed, and then people left, and I toughed it out too long, and it really hurt me and harmed me. I wish I
mm,
had left sooner.
yeah. Do you have in your research many stats on how this is affecting productivity in the workplace and engagement?
Y-
Did you?
Yes, yeah, definitely. Definitely it kills engagement. It's
Mm,
the antithesis of engagement. It kills productivity over time because what we see is almost an inverse effect. People will overperform to try and impress a toxic boss,
right.
particularly if they're an achievement-oriented person, someone who values doing well in their career. They'll say, okay, this boss is difficult to deal with, but I'm going to actually work harder and try to impress them.
Yeah.
So we see that, but then over time, the productivity suffers. They disengage. They they're not their energy isn't as good, and their cognitive capacity isn't as good because they're not sleeping as
Right.
well. And so then we start to see, I mean, their creativity suffers, but their focus, their ability to focus and remember suffers too. So it can be a self-fulfilling prophecy, like I told you earlier, about you start to lose your mental abilities a little bit over time.
Yeah. Yeah. Big impact on the workplace. I mean, why are these leaders in place? Like, why are these leaders overlooked by their superiors in the workplace? Because you would think that if you had a toxic leader, and I've experienced it, and I know many stories where there's been a toxic leader, and it seems like they just keep staying there, and people come in and leave, and it's just a bad environment. But why do people insist on keeping these toxic bosses in place?
Three things. One is they bring in value to the organization. So they
Right.
either bring in clients, projects, revenue, whatever it is, they're bringing in value. And the organization is scared to lose that. Number two, they
Mm,
are friends with the people that are meant to hold them accountable. So they're part of
right.
the club, or they're friends with the boss's boss or the CEO, or
Yeah.
whatever it is. They're ingrained politically. They have those political allies or friendships,
Yeah.
or it could be family. It really depends, but for some reason that makes it way harder. And then
Right.
number three is fear of conflict, fear of it'll be very difficult to let them go, so let's just let them stay. So it's fear-based
Yeah. That makes sense.
avoidance.
Yeah. But I mean, if they realize the impact that that person in place is having on the overall productivity and performance of the business, surely they'd realize that that person shouldn't be in that role.
Oh, yeah, you would think over time, yes, but it often gets kind of shoved under the carpet, and the true impacts aren't realized until later on when you suddenly have lost multiple people and talented people.
Yeah,
So the
yeah,
question that should be asked is why did that person quit? Or why did that person who was a high performer all of a sudden they're having performance issues and their boss is saying they're a low performer? That doesn't seem to add up because we usually don't see someone go from high to low performance unless something bad has happened in their life or in the
in the
workplace.
workplace, yeah. And that's
Mhm.
why exit interviews are quite powerful, right? Like, so to have someone above to do an exit interview for those people under that person when they leave to ask those sort of questions.
Exit interviews are very powerful, but they
Mm.
need to be treated as gold and data that you take seriously.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you review it with the team. You don't just say, hey, HR, you do it, and then keep it in your file folders. And here, there it is. And
Well,
a
that's a
toxic
lot of
boss
it,
is
isn't
very
it?
good at very good at saying, "Oh, well, yeah, there's reasons for that. They weren't a good performer. They were this, they were that. Okay, someone else
Yeah.
quit and complained about you. Yeah, but that was another situation where they didn't fit." Or so the toxic boss can explain it all away if you let them.
Yeah, I worked for a good organization that really loved and had a toxic boss. And I left that environment for that particular reason. Um, and after a few more people in my position left, that boss actually was made redundant
But
because
not without the
they had
damage of
well they
losing.
did some damage, didn't they? Yeah,
Yeah, they lost talent, including you. So you
but
totally understand. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I've experienced it, and I guess from my point of view, I'm pretty. I guess from I've worked from a young age, so I've had many bosses in my time, and I identify them, and when I identify them and I go, this doesn't make me feel good, I leave straight away, like I quit. What
Good.
I mean, a lot of people in the workplace that may have a toxic boss, I guess the fear is that okay, I've got a toxic boss and it's causing me anxiety, whatever. But what am I going to do otherwise? Like, I can't leave this job. That must be the most common thing why people stay under toxic bosses.
I can't leave because A, I won't be able to find another job, or B, I'm tied in financially with stocks, incentives, I don't know,
Right.
long-term pension, all of that. Or I'm of an age where it's harder to find a job. We see that, and then they feel like they're in a cage. And I always say, you're not in a cage. The cage is none of us are in a cage. There's always a way forward. And sometimes it's moving jobs within the organization. If it's a big enough organization, sometimes people do that. But there's five other options. Only one of those five options is to quit. And quitting is an option. You always have the chance to quit, but you may not have the ability to feel that you can quit. So then there's changing your psychological contract and saying, okay, I'm going to treat this like a job. I'm going to set boundaries. Here's how I'm going to get through each day. And I have that strategy in the book. And there's pros and cons. So it doesn't work that long with a toxic boss because a toxic
Mm,
boss tends to get worse over time, but it can buy you some time. And then I have creating a winning exit plan, which is you're going to set a good riddance date, which is a GR date, and you're going to give yourself a period of time where you have a date where you are leaving no matter what. And then it motivates people to start putting in the actions and the steps to get out
mm,
of there.
mm. So these are some of the practical tools you share in your book about how you can
Yeah.
fix the problem. Not fix the
And
problem,
filing a
remove the
report,
problem.
filing a claim to HR, pros and cons. And I walk people through all of
Right.
that, going down the legal path, pros and cons, because I want people to be really educated on the fact that all of these have their pros and cons and risks. It's a matter of the types of risks you're willing to take, and I want people to be educated on that.
Yeah. So the what do you call it? The GR date.
Good riddance. Yeah, I
Good
made that
riddance.
up. I made that up. I mean, I'm sure it exists somewhere else, but I made it up for the book because I thought if there's a way people can keep that date and people really like it. It gives them a sense of empowerment.
So what is it when you get that through that good riddance date, you leave that workplace, what are the strategies we can go to get back in and revamp our confidence to really ignite our career again after we've experienced for however short a period of time a toxic boss?
I have a whole chapter on recovery. It's about the
Recovery?
recovery buffet. It's a buffet, so it's really about what are some of the small things that you can do, the things that can make a difference and that you can do immediately. What
Yeah.
are some of the things that are more of a time investment and deeper healing? Because it is a form of trauma to work for a toxic boss. And the longer it goes on, the more trauma you have to release and heal from. So I talk about different therapies, I mean, medication, different,
What are some
oh,
therapies that you'd consider, just as an example?
I mean, somatic therapies, because a toxic boss impacts your body and your mind. So if we can change your n- your patterns of thinking, but also release some of the traumas in your body. So somatic therapies, EMDR is one of them, for example. But there's so many. I have a whole appendix of a bunch of the ones that are out there today. That's EFT, etc. So
Yeah.
there's
Okay.
it all depends, but I educate people on, well, what type of therapists are there and what type of credentials you want to look for in a regulated therapist and what are these therapies? And I make it simple. I'm always practical. Like, what is it? And it's kind of the basics, and then you need to go find the options for
Find the
you.
options that fit your
Yeah.
situation. Very
Yeah.
insightful work and great book. I love it.
Mm.
I talk about this and have done for a decade, talking about, making sure that you enjoy your work because it's a big part of our life. Um, is there anything that I've missed that I should have asked you about the book or this particular topic?
Well, I think the last chapter on my book is all about getting back into the driver's seat of your career and that the grass is greener post toxic boss. And I'm a career psychologist. I'm all about how people can thrive in their careers. And I've just seen so many wonderful examples of people getting into a much better workplace post-toxic boss and truly recovering. And then the toxic boss experience was, what did I learn from that? How did I grow from that? And so there is the light at the other side of this tunnel. So I really like that final chapter in the book for that reason.
Mm. You're an entrepreneur
Yes.
and you've left the corporate world or
Yeah, I
working for
consult to
people.
the corporate world. I like to have one foot in, one foot out.
Yeah. Not everyone's into that space or wanting to do that. What would you talk to someone, that's unhappy in their workplace, potentially with a toxic boss or not, and, trying to, I guess, find a career, vocation, something that makes them feel a bit more alive?
Well, I've run Canada Career Counseling for 17 years, and Canada Career Counseling is all about how do you find purpose, meaning, and fulfillment in your career at
Yeah.
any stage and age. And it's about career is a huge part of your waking time and your
Mm.
identity. And we do really believe people can find careers that fit their strengths, talents, values, interests, personality, all of that, and just getting people to really dig deep into what do I want to be doing in this world next?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
if you're unhappy going to work every day, that's a problem. That's
Yeah.
going to really eat away at your well-being. Would you agree?
Yeah. 100%. And for me personally, I feel like, I've connected those dots in time from past jobs. Okay, I enjoyed that aspect of it, but not that. And suddenly it just forms into something that I really enjoy doing. But that takes
Exactly.
a lot of courage and awareness to get to that point, right? So I think for people out there, they really need to spend some time within to figure out
Mhm.
what that looks like for them, what their values
And some
are.
people can do it within, and other people get looping thoughts where they just get stuck in their own head, and then having a coach or counselor to work with them really helps. So it just
Yeah,
depends on the person.
yeah, yeah. Plenty of people that can help you get that insight. Lovely to chat with you today, Dr. Laura.
You too, Lee. I think your podcast helps a lot of people, and I can tell that you truly care about helping people with their development. So thank you for the work that you're doing.
Well, thank you. We'll launch this episode and we'll see a uprise in people quitting their jobs now. See, so thank you.
Oh,
Doing good
not
things.
my fault.
No, it's great. Great book. I'll stick a link in the show notes for everyone listening out there. So make sure you jump on to thehiddenwhy.com. Links for Dr. Laura will be there as well. So if you want to reach out and connect, you can. Any final words?
No, just that people stay well, and you can find the book at drlaura.live, drlaura.live/books, and it's on Audible as well as all the audio platforms, and then the actual physical book, which has a nice feel and color, and
I
then
love a physical
ebook. So
book.
it's wherever you want to find your books, you'll find mine.
Why did you choose that color? It's like a light blue.
It's like yeah, it's a vibrant sort of shade, almost like a teal, but yeah,
Yeah.
bluish teal.
Yeah.
I just wanted it to really pop. I'm a person who likes color, and I think it's a sad topic, but
It's an
I don't
important one.
know. Yeah, I
It's a
wanted
very
it to
important
pop
one.
so people would catch it on
Yeah,
shelves, and they do. Yeah, it stands out.
it's great. Well, I'll stick the link
Thank
in the
you.
show notes. Again, thank you, Dr. Laura, for coming on. Guys, check it out at thehiddenwhy.com. Until next time, peace, passion, and purpose. See you soon.